Thanks for tuning in to Look at My JPEG, the podcast that discusses NFT, DeFi, and NFT financialization. This is your host, Xerox Jose, the founder of NFT Perp. The reason why I want to do this podcast is because there's just not enough people talking about NFT financializations. In this podcast, you can expect us to invite guests that are builders, founders, even investors that are deep in the NFT financialization space. We'll discuss their story, what they're building, and how you can get involved. So thanks for tuning in. Welcome to episode 4. This week, we have a perfect example of a DAO that merges at the intersection of NFTs and DeFi. Goblin Sax is a DAO that focuses on underwriting NFT loans. We asked them what it's like to operate purely as a DAO in Web3 and what inspired them to build Goblin Sax in the first place. Please welcome Daniel and Terry on the team, and I hope you enjoyed this conversation. GM, thank you guys for joining Look at My JPEG episode 4 today. While Daniel is joining, let's welcome our guest, Terry from Goblin Sax. Terry, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I guess we'll wait for a minute before Daniel comes on. But maybe before we hop in, Terry, tell us who you are, your little background, and how you got into Goblin Sax.
Yeah, for sure. Hey guys, I'm Terry. Background, I used to study math. And then I did work for TradFi for a tiny bit. I guess how I got into Goblin Sax, I do work for 1KX, and Goblin Sax is closely affiliated with 1KX. But I've always been interested in NFT financialization ever since sort of I guess maybe mid last year. And I've been writing about it pretty consistently. And so it's quite a nice fit for me.
That's awesome. What was your first NFT?
Actually, the PFP I have right now wasn't expensive or anything, but I just ended up keeping it because it was my first.
Sentimental.
Exactly.
All right, Daniel's on. How are you doing, Daniel?
I'm doing very good. I had to change my device to my phone. I did not know it did not work on the PC.
Yeah, it's a bit of a struggle. I wish I could use Twitter Space on my MacBook because if we can plug in the microphone, the audio is usually a little better. But anyway, it's good to have you on. Daniel, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got into Goblin Sax.
So my story is that the initial incubator, the man adding people to Goblin Sax was Ryan, and I had known Ryan around 2 years ago when we created some kind of trading algorithms. So around this year, I was doing a PhD. My PhD was main thing was blockchain. So I was doing some research in blockchain. I hadn't talked to Ryan for some time, but I had this class assignment. I had to make some kind of a project in Solidity or something like that. And well, I asked Ryan, are you doing some cool stuff? And Ryan's like, fuck yeah, I'm doing some cool stuff. There is this DAO I'm in which we need contributors in, which we need stuffs in. And well, that's exactly what I'm looking for. And well, 6 months into that, I am no longer a PhD student, but I am full-time in Goblin Sax.
That's awesome. I came across Goblin Sax, I believe probably 2-3 months ago. One of your BD team member introduced me to Goblin Sax. He loves how you guys run community. Maybe let's back it up a little bit for those that don't know what Goblin Sax does. Haven't heard of you guys. Give us a quick, 30 seconds introduction of what Goblin Sax is, who you guys are, what you guys do.
Yeah, for sure. Goblin Sax, we're an NFT finance collective, kind of involved in everything around NFT finance. The way we started, though, we started underwriting loans on DeFi by collecting ETH from all of our members and then developing strategies around pricing, developing strategies around automation. And our job is to sort of push the narrative forward, push the space forward, and provide liquidity in a way that's capital efficient.
I love that. Tell us a little bit about the origin story. What's the problem you guys kind of saw, and what was the potential solution, and maybe give us a little behind the curtain on what happened with the very cool Harry Potter themed Green God style and transition towards Goblin Sax.
Yeah, I guess I can take that as well. Yeah, I mean, Goblin Sax was spun up not necessarily as a response to a problem, but more so a response to an opportunity, right? We saw Nifty Fi yields, they were astronomically high. We believed that we had a more efficient pricing algorithm. We believed we had better sort of mathematics and theoretical backgrounds to assess those risks. Based on that belief, we started underwriting. We were quickly able to get a lot of volume on Nifty Fi. And I guess we started off as Gringotts DAO, but there were internal concerns about potential IP infringement issues. And so we did pivot to Goblin Sax, which I guess
Which doesn't have any infringement issues.
Yeah, there's like a less degree of potential infringement, but like everyone knows what it's supposed to mean.
Yeah, no, I love that. But in both instances, it's kind of referencing to, banking sort of model where you take out. There's an idea of being a bank offering loans and being able to earn yield on top of that. So generally love the branding, love what you guys are doing. From the outside looking in, you guys definitely are very attractive in terms of the amount of liquidity you can offer to people that are looking out for loans. Maybe let's talk a little bit about the community, because I feel that when Goblin Sax, this group of people, the collective, are made of very quality individuals. Tell us a little bit about your gating process, what your thoughts on running a DAO should look like, gating applications, and general strategy around who you collect as a collective.
Yeah, I think Daniel can take that, considering he is a community member.
So DAOs are, the way I see, DAOs are just a place. The biggest strength of DAOs is that it can connect people together, people who are in different walks of life, people who are who would never know each other without it, because without it, I wouldn't have connected with Terry. Like DAOs has this branding potential of pulling people in. We have been able to connect with some people which wouldn't have been easy in any way. So that is what makes Goblin Sax. Goblin Sax is right now kind of a gated community, so to speak. We only have few users here and there, but this makes our model very easy. That's what my belief is.
I was going to ask you, what does the DAO composition look like? If you can share, what kind of people are contributing to Goblin Sax as a DAO, or what does a day of a life look like for a Goblin Sax contributor?
So the day of a life for a Goblin Sax, it depends on your time zone, to be honest. So if you're in some time zone, it's how the night looks like. But usually it starts with a couple of talking here and there. We strategize some stuff. We have some internal discussion with the work group on how to move forward. But there is a lot of freedom in how the day of a life of a DAO member looks like. It's really up to you. It's really up to how much you can get done in a given space of time. It's about, so when you want to do something new, there is something else that's not really common in other company. You have to convince people to take the direction that it is the right thing to do. That doing this. So right now initially, as Terry brought up, we started writing loans. But we wanted to be more that loans was an opportunity at that specific time, but NFT financialization is a big opportunity. It just doesn't, it's not just about loans, so we have to expand from there. So about that, it's about getting together everyone from the DAO, deciding on a vision. And sometimes the vision requires some pushing through. You move forward in a vision, people agree. It's a lot of freedom with a lot of convincing, a lot of DAO aspect. It's a lot of positives and it's some negatives. It's a part of everything. That's how everything is.
I understand. So I'm personally part of an NFT DAO as well. And while you're an NFT DAO, I think DAO in general, some people are convinced that DAOs don't work, but we've seen some DAOs that operate very, very well. So I think, operating DAO 101 is probably one of the most important thing as an operator or being a contributor in a DAO should take note of when you have too many opinions and things, it's hard to move forward. So I feel like having a good strategy on how things are implemented is a big part. Is there any lessons that you guys learned so far in terms of operating on a DAO format that you can share with us?
So at the end of the day, DAOs are a system like any other. There is nothing special. So the DAOs are not and special snowflakes, so to speak. It's just a system to put human together. So and we humans, we follow certain ways. I mean, we have been following certain patterns for decades, for centuries. And Goblin Sax, we decided to find the kind of structure that helps us move forward the most. So we have been following this kind of governance structure where we divide ourselves into team. Each team proposes because I believe this was the Yearns model, and this has been pretty efficient for us in terms of compared to anything else. We have this work group who decide specific stuff. They decide on a monthly budget, and inside it there is scope of freedom. So there is a structure, defines something to do, and well, it's a trade-off. It's some kind of a middle ground between structure and having no structure, because having absolutely no structure at all, it just can't work.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So tell us a little bit about inside Goblin Sax, if you can share. How many departments and teams are there, and what do they do specifically in terms of the operations?
This is a very dynamic question, so to speak. So our team proposal is going into vote pretty soon, and it is subject to change. But right now, as things stand, so Goblin Sax has created some kind of an integration system where so right now the structure in NFTFi is that there are like 50-60 lenders who dominate 60% of the market, who dominate like 80% of the market, like 60-70 lenders and borrowers. So they are responsible for most of the volume, and a thesis Goblin Sax has that if we can expand beyond that number, it would be good for everyone. So one of the things we're moving on is integration for our loans, where anyone can integrate our stuff up. And to do this, we want to make this experience as easy as possible. So integrations has become an important aspect in this. So we have one team integrations, we have one team products, which is responsible for shipping products in, and there is a portfolio management team whose job is to decide on the best LTVs, decide on the best APRs, decide on the whitelist to collect. Do we want to expand in? And each has a different flow. So inside this portfolio management group, it involves a lot of automated and manual decision making, and there is not always consensus on what is the best way to move forward. There never is. I mean, you can't know without there are some extremely hard decisions to make. You don't know which is the right decision unless you make it. So we do find a ground in which we think is right for us over the next 3 months. If that doesn't become the right ground, we move from there, we try something else. But this is our structure. I guess this is the structure.
To ask you is the Goblin Sax, do you guys specifically limit to certain lenders borrowers that can come to your platform and give out loans? What does that look like? Do you lend to just about anybody, or do you have specific requirements on credit score for borrowers?
Okay, so this was a direction we had. So we give loans to everybody, I think, Stan. As long as we measure in terms of risk, and risk is how much the price can deviate certain percentage within a certain threshold in a given time, and that tells us enough most of the time. But there are these specific lenders. So one time we discovered, it was before the CryptoDebuts had all its hype. There was one lender who had taken 200 loans in CryptoDebuts, and he had paid one borrower, and he had repaid every single one of them. No default, even when on negative equity, he always pays back. There are some specific borrowers like this sometimes. And just because they did it in the past doesn't mean they will do it on the future too. I mean, but we did test some hypotheses. It seems like there might be certain chances that if a borrower keeps repaying on negative equity, he might do it on the future. But this hypothesis has not been integrated in our system, so to speak. We just provide loans to everyone as long as we look at the asset, we don't look at the person too much. But unless you have some reputation, unless you are coming from a company or who is already on the space, in such cases we might treat you a bit differently.
Got it. Yeah, that's interesting. So maybe it's time for us to kind of dive a little bit deeper into how you guys give out specific strategy on loans. So maybe if Terry is here, I'd love for him to kind of cover this part as well. So I believe when you see an opportunity as a lender or any sort of DeFi strategy, a lot of times it's about data collection. And data collection usually gives you data-driven decisions. And when it comes to collecting data, knowing where to look, it's also a very, very important thing. So maybe give us some insights on, in terms of pricing NFTs. You guys, mentioned on, pricing NFTs was a big foundation for Goblin Sax. What sort of data do you guys collect? What sort of surprising insights have you guys discovered in the past months of running Goblin Sax, and how has that translated to your different manual or automated strategies?
Okay, so this is an extremely thank you for this question. I think this is a question I would love to speak in. So I think the NFT data was very bad like 6 months ago. It's still bad right now, but it was really, really bad in that time. So we had to create most of the time I have spent on data analytics, it has been on collecting data from multiple places. So to make any decisions, the basic thing you need is the price. So the floor price of NFT, we use 3 different APIs, and 3 different APIs were providing 3 different floor prices. We had no idea what was the correct one, how to move forward in it. And that's the most basic data to move in. So what we had to do was we had to scrape off every listing, bid, and cancel data of OpenSea, and reconstruct the floor data and see which was actually providing the right data for one. And we actually used that for the historic one, and for the live one, we started collecting our live floor data. And well, there are some proprietary stuff here, but we collect floor price data. We collect every data we can. We collect trade data. We collect NFT specific data for which there are no specific APIs. We collect listing data. We collect how much everyone else is bidding. We collect as much as we can. And not every data is useful right now as things stand, but I mean, they will be useful. It's good to have more data. I mean, it's never too bad. And well, we visualize some of these data in a certain aspect. We visualize how much LTV loans are popular. These are some in-house data we have created by merging the NFT loan data with the floor data we can get out. The valuation data provided by different services, how good they are, how bad they are. So in context of this, some of the surprising finding based directly of NFT data was that mathematical model consider rational actors when creating strategies. But NFT data shows that even when an asset enters negative equity, 40% of the time people repay back their loan. There are a lot of stuff which directly doesn't make sense. And so there were early days in the NFT, the market was much, much more irrational, so to speak. The people were providing loans at an LTV of 3, 4, and a lot of early lenders make a lot of profit by profiting off this information. So as the NFT has become more and more matured, the lenders have become more and more mature too. But there are still some degenerate borrowing, so to speak. There are some the market is not fully based on the mathematical models. They are not fully clean yet. Some collections get an APR this much lower than what they should get. Some get something that they get much higher than what they should get. I mean, it is an interesting market with a lot of interesting insights.
For those that are listening, maybe don't necessarily understand negative equity. Can you explain real quick what that means as a borrower?
Okay, so you take a loan for CryptoPunks for 50 ETH. Say CryptoPunks has a bad day. CryptoPunk enters 40 ETH now. Like that asset, like you got 50 ETH out of it, but you only have 14. So like what how much amount you took a loan as, like it's higher than what your asset is worth. So ideally a rational borrower would just default on that loan, and well, not because he already has 10 is profit, but there are some borrowers who still choose to repay the loan.
Yeah, meaning, sometimes maybe those NFTs mean a little bit more than just the
Yes,
face value.
exactly.
For
Exactly. There is a sentimental value to the NFT for people. Like it's just not about the numbers. And it is actually kind of beautiful in a certain way. Like people like their NFT. They love their NFT, that they are willing to overpay for their NFT. I mean, it's actually a strength of this space.
Yeah.
And good for us. And good for us.
That's right. Yeah, good. So maybe let's take a little shift and talk a little bit about, because we kind of discussed some pricing of NFTs, and we discussed the floor pricing, but I've kind of read through some of your documents on Medium and found out that you have some pretty interesting insights in terms of the distribution of pricing in a given collection. Maybe give us a little more insights on how NFTs are values within a given collection in terms of pricing distribution.
Okay, Terry has been silent for a bit. He can take this one.
Yeah, I guess that was quite a while ago, and generally speaking, like NFTs follow different pricing distributions, where either you have a couple really expensive ones, mostly at the floor, one scenario. Number two, generally normally distributed across the entire trait system. And number three, like heavy left tail, completely trailing off right tail. Kind of opposition to the first one, where there were a couple dots on the right and then everything on the left. There's a little bit of a continuum, but still really fat tails on the left. I guess this is somewhat of a dichotomy you could think of.
Mm-hmm. Is this still evolving as we go? Since like 3, 4, or 5 months ago.
Yeah, absolutely. But instead of sort of really focusing on the distribution of NFT items, because a lot of the loans executed are at floor, we've actually been more focused on the distribution of prices and the distribution of price movement over time. Right.
Mm-hmm.
One of the calls for moving in this was that like we had a few defaults, and like even when external APIs like this is a non-rare asset, so there is one non-rare asset in a given collection. Like every valuation metric shows that it's worth around 2 or 3 times the floor. But if no one buys it, I mean it's not worth anything. So in these assets, especially collections which are not CryptoPunks and Bored Ape Yacht Clubs, we had an extremely hard time selling these assets off. So if we are gonna sell at floor, might as well use floor.
That's interesting. So would you guys say that most of your loans that are giving out and collateral taken in are around floor prices?
100%. 100%. I mean, for our automated strategy, that's all we're able to sort of process at the moment. Not that we don't have the capabilities to, but from a risk perspective, it makes no sense, because liquidating a like something that's sort of not on the floor is extremely difficult. And I guess from like a sort of white glove solution perspective, where we work with people, consistently over time, we provide sort of like a lending facility to them. Yeah, like we have worked with non-floor collections. We have worked with large number of collections. Same thing, that's going on in Meta Street.
That's quite interesting, because I think different sort of NFT holders that are holding rare NFTs, people that are holding floor NFTs, generally have different strategies on how they access liquidity. So I would imagine, some sort of credit score could be given to a specific wallet address in the future, or perhaps a system that could evaluate this borrowers' behavior based on analysis, and therefore give out different sorts of loan model. But it sounds like a very manual work, and it can take a lot of time. What does the return currently look like for Goblin Sachs on a generic floor loan?
Yeah, Daniel, maybe you take that.
I mean, the rate in NFTFi average rate is something around 20-30% in terms of APR for right now as things stand. If you provide LTV around 50-60% or something like the 60, like the LTV average LTV is increasing collection wise, but 30% in year or something like that. But that doesn't consider the fact that in a 1 month loan there will be a lot of defaults, there will be a lot of price falls and stuff. But even after all that, there is absolutely no doubt that like NFT-Fi is the biggest yield for everything. Like we did this analysis, like how much do people earn in despite defaults, and we just looked at if they were able to sell off their defaults at floor price, historically speaking in NFT-Fi, they someone providing a loan and everything would still had made a yield like that's not comparable to anything else in the market. And I think this is where like these attempts to create P2 pools comes in. Like the yield is so much good than everything else in the market in spite of defaults so far. And well, people have to have access to it, but well, they have not succeeded so far, the implementations, but well, the yield is, the APRs are high.
What does the current default rate look like?
It really depends on how the market does. I mean, at the end of the day, it depends on how does S&P 500 performs in that given month. So, like in average, I'm guessing the default rate is if you provide loans in a given collection at 55-60%, in a good collection at 55-60% default, you should expect around, in a 30-day loan, you should expect around 6-7% default rate. I'm just throwing numbers off the top of. I don't know the exact numbers. I mean, but it's a ballpark.
Did you say 16%?
6% default rate, 6 to 7.
Oh, okay. 6%. Yeah. I guess that's not bad. If you guys are giving out a 40 to 50% loan to value ratio, so what does a typical liquidation process look like for you guys? Did you just put it on auction or put it on an exchange? You just make sure and hope someone list it and hope someone go and buy it?
A lot of discretion is involved in this process.
Oh yeah, Daniel. I mean, I can also add there. Yeah, like a lot of it looks like that, but we also have data that brings in all asks and bids across all platforms, right? So we're able to execute at best prices.
So there, it basically what you're saying is you know what the liquidity profile looks like for that collection.
Not on a granular level at all times, but when we have to do liquidations, yes.
Okay, got it. And this is where I imagine protocols like Abacus, Putty Finance, perhaps the NFT Perp can come in and help sort of hedge the sort of risks.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why we've always been super interested in you guys' development because like we do want to hedge collection-wide downside risk. We don't want to be sort of holding a big bag of worthless NFTs. And yeah, like you're absolutely right.
Yeah, go for it, Daniel.
Okay, so if we can provide it, I think that's how we first met you guys up. Like if we can provide, we can hedge our NFTs in a certain way. Like we can provide pretty high LTV loans, but there is nothing perfect to hedge as things stand. I mean, we can make theories. We can say that when ETH goes down, this NFT as a whole will go down. There is a most likely scenario it will. So we can say if for that coin goes down, then Bored Ape Yacht Club has some degree of correlation with it, and we can make our position there hedged. But there is no perfect product, and we are extremely open. We have been looking at everything in that space. Like this is where these product comes in, as you say.
Yeah, I keep thinking about, because what I like about NFT-Fi as a lending and borrowing protocol, and obviously it's one of the first ones that specifically address the model of P2P loans. What I like about NFTFi, it's very predictable. You know exactly how long this loan duration is. You know the premium you can expect, and if it hits certain ratio, loan to value ratio, people might default. It's very, very predictable. Therefore, you can deploy strategies that are matching with these, right? With a simple put option contract, for example, it's very, very predictable. Once you get into other protocols that are working on P2 pool, perhaps some of the ownership of loans and unwinding of positions aren't necessarily well defined. Things can get a little tricky. Are you guys only focusing on NFT5 at the moment? Are you guys currently actively exploring, looking into other protocols that are maybe up and coming or currently early in strategy? What does your appetite look like in terms of protocols within the market?
So P2Pool has got a bad name recently in the last few days because most implementations of P2Pool don't implement the strengths of NFT5. So P2Pool currently, what most P2Pool had been doing, so to speak, was that they were trying to market it as a riskless return. You can do this for a liquid. Aave can do this for Ethereum or Bitcoin because they are more liquid assets. But as we saw with the fiasco recently, like some of these assets are hard to sell off, and particularly harder when you have a logic set plus that like people can only buy the liquidation at 95% of the loan amount and stuff like that. But these protocols give APR at 2-3%, and NFTFi gives it at like 20-25%, and people still take loans on NFTFi. Why do they do it? I mean, one is convenience, one is the market factor. What other reasons might it be? So one of the reasons we think is that NFTFi, you don't get liquidated in NFTFi. You get liquidated in every other places. You might get liquidated while you are sleeping at the middle of the night. But in NFTFi, as long as you have an option to till the expiry date of that loan, like only then does someone chooses to liquidate themselves or not. And so this is the reason why NFTFi has a bigger like APR too. Like the lenders are taking a bigger risk, so to speak. Like immediately after it turns negative, your asset is not immediately liquidated. And in this aspect, like we have been closely following Asteria, who has been coming. So they are in terms of integrating this logic inside their vault. So they are having vaults which offer different LTVs, APRs, so to speak, and they are dynamically their model is constantly changing and evolving. But that is a very interesting platform for us because they are going to integrate NFTFi's biggest strength in their vaults. So this is going to be extremely interesting. We have been looking at them very like we want to create our strategies for their and based on our knowledge in LTVs and APRs, and we have been exploring products. We have been exploring what we can build ourselves. Like have been exploring a lot of things, everything we can.
Can you repeat that name of the project? I think I missed it.
Asteria, the guys from SushiSwap, the previous CTO of SushiSwap, that one.
Got it. Yeah, I was reading the documentations just a couple of days ago. I think the main thing that I think the key differences of NFTFi and obviously like BendDAO, like a P2 protocol model, P2 pool model. I think the reason why NFTFi works so well, and you kind of hit on the nail, is borrowers don't have the worry of waking up in the next day and realizing and finding out that their collateral got liquidated. With NFTFi, like I mentioned earlier, it's very predictable. As a borrower, you know exactly before a certain date, pay back your loan, you can always get your NFT back. I think if this can be implemented on a P2 protocol model, like P2 pool model, like Astaria, which they have a 3-actor sort of model, which makes it extremely predictable and don't come to bad debt, and lenders don't kind of foolishly enter positions without knowing the proper risks that are involved. So that's interesting. Yeah. Do you guys know when they're launching, by the way?
No idea about that. Maybe 3 months, but there will be some of these very specific questions, and depending on how they answer that is going to play a big part in how their protocol performs, because suddenly when you allow a lot of vaults, you will have to define who sets the vault, who is the LTV and APR, when can you change the LTV and APRs. Like it becomes a difficult problem. But if these problems are solved in such a way that market loves, like they can integrate the strengths of NFTFi directly on the protocol. But these are extremely difficult problem, and they are extremely difficult to get it right. So I mean, we don't know the specific details of how they are doing their everything, but well, it can be a big threat to the NFTFi model, so to speak.
Yeah. Do you guys think you will be more on the capital contributor, or do you think you'll be the strategy or underwriter?
Why not both?
Well, isn't that the idea, to be like permissionless, where you can write strategies and capital contributor can like decide where they want to go? And I would suppose the strategy underwriters can get some sort of profit share, rev share based on the model that they provide. But yeah, I mean, both make sense. And it's essentially what you guys are doing with NFT5, just in a compact, protocol way.
Exactly. I mean, we define the strategy, we provide the loan for this strategy.
Yeah, makes sense. So maybe let's zoom out a little bit. We've kind of gone in a little bit, pretty deep on NFT lending and borrowing. And tell us a little bit about Goblin Hideout. What do you guys have kind of come across so far? What's interesting to Goblin Sax? What do you spend your time in terms of researching? What's next for Goblin Sax? What are you guys bullish on? And potential future strategies you guys looking to deploy?
Terry,
Yeah.
please.
Potential strategies that we're going to deploy. Let's start with that one. We've mostly been lending for a return. Interesting idea to explore is lending for the purpose of liquidation, right? Some sort of, credit hedge fund type. We haven't really explored the profitability of such scenarios because liquidity on the bid side is opaque, and it's pretty hard data to actually aggregate. And even if you aggregate the data, it's pretty hard data to actually execute on. It's kind of like, it's kind of like the Chicago trading firms. If you see an opportunity, the ability to execute as quickly as possible, and to make sure that other people don't see the opportunity before you. So it's pretty tough. I'd say in terms of the future direction that we're going to, Goblin Sax is likely going to have some method to democratize its strategies, whether that's through Asteria or through our own front end. Like both are avenues that we're exploring. Like we have developed pretty robust pricing engine, pretty theoretically and mathematically intense understanding of the NFT collateralized market. And I think the next step would be to make that sort of engine available, to all investors that want to participate.
That's super interesting. One of the live audience sent me a Telegram message asking, would you guys mind comparing yourselves in terms of business model with MetaStreet? Is there any overlaps on what you touched on just now and the different, target users, perhaps?
Yeah, for sure. So, MetaStreet Vault. All right, there's a bit of an echo. Could you just mute? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. MetaStreet is in the business of sort of buying up these different collection promissory notes, and therefore, I guess controlling liquidity for different collections. And we're kind of agnostic to that type of vision. Like we just want to provide people best yields. I guess the other difference is MetaStreet requires people to sell their promissory notes, originate, and then sell their promissory notes into the vaults, whereas we are an originator. And whether we originate with more capital and then deposit into MetaStreet our promissory notes and then do whatever with our product, let them expire. Like both are open avenues to us. So I would say like there are many scenarios in which we are actually very, very complementary to MetaStreet and somewhat of like a downstream supplier, essentially.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for uncovering that. Coming back to what you kind of touched on earlier about the bid side, would you say, and I probably agree with this as I'm saying this, but the NFT lending and borrowing market is it a basically a buyer's bidder's market where there's so much supply, people looking to get yield, but there's not enough people looking for borrowing opportunity or access to capital?
Uh, the numbers say no. So the like market order matching says yes. Like there are less people who want to borrow than there is capital, but then uh the terms of those orders seem to indicate no, because if you kind of look at the fair pricing, it is a tiny bit, I would say, lower than the market executed price at the moment.
Oh, that's interesting. So what you're basically saying is like the terms on the outside, it looks like there are a lot of supplier, but because these terms are actually not great for borrowers, they don't want to enter a loan.
Yeah, exactly. Which does make it seem like either the capital that's willing to underwrite these is much scarcer than we think compared to the amount of people who want to borrow, or like the risk assessment is should be significantly more um, conservative than we believe it to be. But if you look at the data and you look at sort of per collection differences, like we are 100% sure that it is the market being inefficient. Like there are so many indicators.
Yeah, 100%. So let's talk a little bit about pricing. We still got maybe 20 minutes left. Um, Tell us a little bit about what pricing you guys usually use. What data how do you determine a collection's valuation? Do you look at the OpenSea floor API? Do you look at an NFT bank floor value? How do you determine a value of a collection?
Sure, I can take this. Number one is we determine the floor by looking at, I believe, pretty much every API out there that aggregates across all marketplaces. So obviously OpenSea is one. We look at Rarible. We look at LooksRare. We look at Reservoir. We look at all of these APIs and we consistently hit them, and we store a quote unquote like minimum floor price across all exchanges to prevent arbitrage on our own database. That's number one. We also have, though we don't use this, we also have an engine that compares NFT bank valuation prices to sort of Nifty-Fi loan principal amounts and like the floor price that we collected to see if using the NFT bank API or like an Upshot API would make financial sense for us in terms of a risk perspective. Like we have the ability to compare that. We looked at sort of historical price fluctuations and biggest drawdowns and volatility and like comparative historical defaults. We look at borrower profiles. We look at sort of liquidity across bids for potentially defaulted collections. What else do we look at? I feel like we look at a lot of stuff. I guess one other thing I could add is we look at sort of the market, like where is Nifty-Fi sort of settle loans, like what terms are they settling at for each specific collection, for each specific duration. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So my question, I'm asking this because sometimes NFT collections can get volatile, and when they get volatile, perhaps protocols like BendDAO, who uses a very straightforward, this is a collection floor price API we got from OpenSea, that's TWAPid. Let's say BAYC as a collection as a whole, playing out what happened back in April and May, like it shot up to 150 in terms of minimum floor price in OpenSea and LooksRare. At that given time, would you guys be comfortable on giving out loans based on that valuation, or do you have a very very slow, valuation of moving average per se?
Our valuation, yeah, we are completely comfortable at giving out valuation at pretty much any price because we can just adjust the LTV and the APR depending on that volatility. which is what we actively do for, I believe we do it really like every 5 seconds. We adjust our terms. So there's like a very small window where you can really take advantage of like a big spike. But I would say like it's in these scenarios where like people need to hedge their downside risk, right? Like everyone is, I guess we would think about it like we have like a portfolio of options, and then like Putty would say, oh, you have a portfolio of like non-recourse loans. But even for both, yeah, you definitely need to hedge your downside.
And I wanted to add a little stuff here, because like sometimes collections go up, but I mean it's easy to tell now that it was obvious that it fell or something like that, but we can't tell at that given time. Something spikes up a lot. I mean, it can go up more. I mean, how do you know it's going from 0 to 100 to like to just from going from 0 to 10? Like, so we can't predict market at a reasonably good rate, so to speak. So we use the price we have access to. We use models which tell us that it is unlikely. There is a 10% chance that it won't go less than this, or it won't fall below this in the next few days or something. Like it happens like it may happen, it may not happen, but over the long run, as long as our models are good, like we will average profit. So that's how we look at things. And there was something pretty interesting in this aspect. So initially we use NFT banks valuation exclusively for providing loans. It was around 4-5 months ago, but there were certain limitations, so to speak. I mean, when it's not your data, you don't have access to everything you desire. We don't have access to how they were historically evaluating this collection, how its backtests look like, how often exactly the price moved, how often was it updated, and when it is entirely yours. Like when you recreate that valuation yourself internally, then you have access to everything. So it is better for us to have access to more and more stuff, as we can't go wrong. There were a few times where we went wrong in the early days. We provided loans to collection using a wrong floor price than what we were supposed to use. We looked at outdated valuations. And so a lot of things we are doing today are a result of adapting to what happened in the past and, well, making sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, it makes sense. As you're building, you start to discover more nuances on giving out loans in these conditions, and you kind of reiterate as you build. So we can fully agree on that. We run into different challenges in NFT perp as well, and with repetitions, we start to realize a better model too. So that's really interesting. Thank you guys for covering all of that. Love to take a moment and ask you guys, how do you guys define success for Goblin Sax long term? If you wake up 5 years from now, where would you want Goblin Sax to be?
1 billion valuation, over a billion, right, Terry?
Yeah, that would be great. I guess in the short term, biggest lender in the space. Not necessarily by volume, but by volume would be great. And then number 2, best risk models in the space, validation that we, really do have the best mathematics. Number 3 would be superior execution and UX. So anyone that comes on Nifty-Fi, instant loan, right? Click, boom, Goblin Sax filled the order. That'd be fantastic. Yeah, and then number 4, as Daniel said, like on our way to big fat valuation too.
Yeah, thank you for covering that. So in terms of valuation, I guess that comes down to how do you guys evaluate yourself? Is it the treasury size? Is it you guys launching a token if there is one? How do we follow more on that?
There is actually a Sax token right now. It's what we use to do our treasury raise. It is a non-transferable token, only on our wallet. So depending on how much progress we make, how much we move over the next few months, I mean, it might become a tradable. It will be a tradable asset, but not at this given time. And so we have each of this work group has a metric by which they define their success. So in the near term success, it depends on number, like how much percentage of the volume we are covering, how much uptime we were able to deliver with the bot, how much was there any issues with it, was there like those kind of numbers which we can easily measure. But in the long run, I mean, we can't create, like, we don't know where this space will go. Like, it might have its big event that the DeFi had, it might never see its day. There are just so many parameters. Like, we can set metrics, but those metrics are not going to happen. I mean, something else will likely happen. So, like, it's in the short term we have such metric in the, but I guess at the end of the day, if you were to use one particular metric to judge it, our report card will likely be the valuation of the Sax token. I mean, it's market. There is no way to accurately measure, but market's measurement will be as good as it gets at a given time compared to the average.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Tell us more about, like, short term. Is there anything like updates from Goblin Sax? What can we expect from Goblin Sax from a public standpoint, if there's any? Before we hop off on the Twitter space, if you have any like leaving notes for the listeners or people that are listening to the podcast.
Yeah, for sure. I think in the immediate future, you'll get to see three things. Number one is a bunch of different front ends will allow you to take immediate loans on their platform that are settled on NiftyFi. Like, immediate. You just click, boom, done. That's powered by us. Number two is you'll likely be able to access a venue where you can deposit capital and be able to utilize our strategies. Yeah. So, like everything that we're doing now, I believe we will have the public be able to access these strategies pretty soon. Number three would be you might see us integrated with some other platforms, providing liquidity and or being a strategist on some other platforms.
Number four, we might be going public with some of the, like, we have collected a lot of data which can be created in a lot of chart. We might be going public with some of these. Number four.
All right. Thank you guys so much. For those that are listening, thank you all for coming to a Twitter space today. Make sure you give Tete Hoho a follow on Twitter and 0013 a follow on Twitter. Thank you for joining us today. And also make sure you follow Goblin Sax on Twitter. And they commonly they always put out a Goblin Hideout, also another NFT financialization podcast, has a lot of overlap with LookatMyJPEG. We have similar guests that we come on, and all of two of us, as a podcast, we're just hoping to bring more awareness to the NFT financialization space. So thank you guys for coming on, and it's been a really good chat. Appreciate you guys spending the time with us.
Thank you. It was really wonderful.
Thank you.
All right, I'll see you guys soon. Thank you. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to Look at My JPEG podcast. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your audio podcasts from, give us a like, a subscribe if you like the content, and we'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.